Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the best Star Wars podcast in the whole world, Jedi Eternal. This is episode 86. I am one of your co-hosts, Braxton Taylor, alongside Andrew, the Hoarder Bolin. I walk in, every square inch of the studio is covered in stuff today. He says it's part of the job. I don't know.
Hey, listen, part of the job. I'm setting up a bunch of laptops for my work. Okay?
Likely excuse.
So I got a lot of boxes.
I heard that there's a local robbery of laptops.
Shut up.
What?
I love how the beginning of our podcast, like as the intro's playing, we both sit here and like try not to move or say anything.
Just
it's
like dead silence.
It's like the quietest we've been all day. In
Don't
that
move.
Moment.
Don't blink. Don't even breathe. Yeah, I know. It's an interesting juxtaposition to what we usually are doing. And
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we're glad to be back in the studio. Unfortunately, we had like a billion things come up at the last second. Well, some of it was planned, some of it was last second last week for both of us, and we just could not get together. So we do apologize about that, but we are glad to be back, and
yes,
we're going to be able to cover both episodes there's the previous one and this new one, episode of Andor. That's going to be our main topic. But before we get into our regularly scheduled stuff here, as we do every episode, we do want to push our Patreon. So just a very quick spiel here, because 99.9% of you listening probably already know this, but we have a Patreon.
Why haven't you already subscribed?
Yeah, if you already know this, why haven't you subscribed? But for real though, we have a Patreon, and there's a single tier right now for only $5 a month. And in that single $5 tier, you get several different things. So if you are someone who really enjoys this podcast, of course, that would be just one reason alone to subscribe. But if you like hearing our stuff and want to get it as soon as possible, you get early access to everything that we post. So whether that be our podcast episodes, our Let's Play episodes, anything that we push out, you're going to have exclusive access to that first before anybody else will. Secondarily, we do, and this is kind of a bigger thing here, that is you get access to our Patreon exclusive podcast called And Other Stuff, where you guys get to listen to a podcast by yourselves. You know, nobody else can listen to this except for those who are subscribed to our Patreon.
We have a lot of fun with them.
We do have a lot of fun. We talk about basically anything and everything other than Star Wars. Sometimes Star Wars comes in because it is a part of our lives, but it is basically every other thing other than Star Wars that we try to talk about. So our own interests and hobbies, things that are coming out, such as games, movies, and TV shows, whatever we want to talk about.
Some would say we go straight up ham in those
ham
episodes.
Bone. Ham-brony, exactly. It gets a little wild,
a little wacky and wild up in the
it is a fun time. And so if you want to have a more just kind of like laid back, just fun conversational type, sometimes it is a little like discussion between me and Andrew, and it gets a little deep depending on what we're talking about. But it is fun though.
Like Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, so it was supposed to be like a side topic that I individually brought, and we ended up being like probably three-quarters of the episode.
I think it was at least 45 minutes worth of Assassin's Creed. So if you like Assassin's Creed,
yeah, you would have loved the last episode.
You're going to love the last episode.
But we do have 8 or 9 episodes on there right now, so that is each at least an hour of content. So there's plenty of for you to.
And if you subscribe now, of course, you have access to what I believe is 8 episodes. But the October episode has not been posted yet, so stick around. If you go ahead and subscribe now, you'll be getting a brand new episode this month here, probably in the next couple weeks. So.
Exactly. So the last thing we will say is part of our $5 tier, you will become a patron, of course, but you also become what we like to call a producer of Jedi Eternal and other stuff. And for those 2 shows, you get to have direct say in what we do, how we operate. If you have suggestions or things that you would like to change, our ears will be tuned to you guys first and foremost, because you are our producers. But last but not least, one thing we do like to do is that we like to shout out each of our producers/patrons each and every episode that we do. So Drew, who is our patrons?
Yes, our patrons this month are JB, Josh and Birkinshaw, Tara Bolin, Grayson David Gill, Alex Mason, Jay Camdar, Jenna Evans, and Promise Quick. There you go.
Wow.
I had to do that in a new voice.
Yeah, I'm sure they appreciate
Did
that.
you? Yeah, I think they
like
did.
that.
Did you appreciate it?
I did, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I was kind of mixing it up, a little announcery. I like that.
Yeah.
So thanks to each and every one of you who are our patron and producers. It really does mean a lot, and it does help us, to do some stuff. We have been able to buy some new gaming stuff for our Let's Play episodes and just different things like that. Helps us cover some subscriptions that we have to pay for. It doesn't cover all of it, but it does help. It definitely does not cover all of it, but it definitely does help, and we appreciate every single subscription. So
yes, very much.
Let us not belabor that.
Enough of the dilly-dally.
No dilly-dally. Enough dilly-dallying, you scallywag. Let us get straight into...
No dilly-dallying unless it's a dilly bar.
Okay. Anyway, let's get straight into what they came here for, and that is all things Star Wars. So we'll go ahead and get into our news this week, and that is Star Wars Tales of the Jedi reveals its poster 3 weeks ahead of its release date. So, Tales of the Jedi is kind of a 6-episode, a little anthology type thing. It's going to have 3 episodes for Count Dooku and 3 episodes for Ahsoka. That's going to go through their life, but they're more of like short stories. They're not inherently full-length things.
They're not even calling them episodes. They're calling them shorts.
Yes.
And that's very important to think about as we get this series, because you don't want to come in disappointed.
Right. And secondarily, what's interesting, if you follow this at all, Dave Filoni, when talking about this, actually almost referred to them as visual poems. They rely more heavily on visuals rather than storytelling, which is going to be definitely interesting. But
it's been said maybe not a whole lot of dialogue should be expected within the series.
Right.
Kind of reminds me of going back to the very original Clone Wars cartoon that was on Cartoon Network, where that was a lot of action and stuff, but there wasn't a whole lot of dialogue in that show.
Right. So, with that said, our news piece was that they released their poster for this show, or this collection of shorts, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And it's a it's kind of the classic floaty head poster, but there's a lot of really cool people in this that we are very recognizable, obviously.
Yeah, so. And I really like this poster, and as you'll see, and if you have not seen this poster, you can see it on our Facebook or Instagram.
Yes.
We have posted it on there. As you can see, though, it does have the Jedi Order symbol kind of there, and then you have all the characters that are going to be involved in this show around it. So let's just kind of go through and look at all the characters here.
Right.
You want to lead that off, or
top left, of course, we have Clone Wars Anakin. That's our classic look. Of course, he plays such a huge part in Ahsoka's life. And again, on this leftward part is going to be mostly people related to Ahsoka, right? So, like I said, we have Anakin, and then below that is Mace Windu, and again, there's going to be more relations to. I lost my train of thought. Anyway, sorry. There's going to be relations between both sides of this, but the left focuses more on Ahsoka, right focuses more on Count Dooku. But below that is Mace Windu, which Mace Windu plays a part into Count Dooku, as we know, but also there is a pretty big part that he plays into Ahsoka's life as well, whether it be good or bad, right?
Right.
Below that, of course, and Drew might have more details on this, but what it looks like is her mother or perhaps grandmother. It is another Targruta that is much older. So
I can't tell for sure from that image. I think that it might be like the grandmother. She has like there is like a grandma that is kind of like, they treat her kind of like she's like the patriarch type for the whole like village, or matriarch. Sorry,
let's get it right here
for the whole village. And then I think the one below that, I believe that is Ahsoka's mother.
Right.
Holding baby Ahsoka.
Baby Ahsoka.
Baby Ahsoka. There.
Yeah. So we see those, and obviously that's going to be the biggest part for her side of things, right? And below that, it looks to be like some sort of Sith character. And I'm trying to look up an article to see if they have a better explanation of who everyone is. Probably would be a good thing to find out beforehand. But what it does appear to be some sort of Sith character is like a red lightsaber, right? And some sort of...
Yeah, so I don't know if this is supposed to be some kind of Inquisitor. or
could be.
I really don't know exactly. However, I would assume that. Oh wait, hold on. Does he have an Inquisitor lightsaber? He does. He does have an Inquisitor lightsaber. So
It's hard to see, but yeah, it is. Yeah.
So my guess would be, is this Inquisitor is somehow connected to Ahsoka.
Right.
I think there's going to be a more personal relationship somehow involved with this, but we'll see.
Yes, and so the bottom left, which is a big surprise,
the star of the show.
Star of the show. It really isn't, but in our hearts it is, and that is Yaddle.
Listen, Yaddle's been waiting
she
for her
needs
moment.
Her
She's
moment
been waiting
to shine.
for her moment to shine.
Yes.
And this is it. She's on the poster. We know we're getting her. And you know what? I hope we get a Yaddle and Yoda conversation.
Oh yeah, of course. You can talk about alimony, kid, child. What's the other one I'm looking for?
Now,
paying money for the children. I can't think what I'm trying to say.
I thought you were gonna
child support.
Child support
for Grogu. That's
Grogu.
Not what's happening, but it would have been funny though. What was you gonna say?
Childbearing hips, those are.
Very beautiful you are.
Oh my!
Give me a child, you will. I can't believe you would say that. Okay, let's go. Okay.
Well, yeah. So what's interesting about what's her face? Sorry, I'm so Yaddle is that Yaddle does not talk in the same way that Yoda does.
Yeah, that is very true. Yeah, and so people were like, it's funny because I can't remember, this discussion was coming along, I think in Mandalorian when the reveal of Grogu, but some people were under presumption that for whatever reason that Yaddle was not canon for some reason, but she is in fact she's only in one movie and for just a short moment, but she is in The Phantom Menace, right? Part of the Jedi Council. So if you go back and see that, you can tell that she clearly is canon, but having her in these little short episodes is going to be very cool because it kind of just resubmits her in canon, I guess.
I think I'm wondering if Yaddle dies in this.
Could be because we kind of see how that happens.
See how it happens
because we don't really have a canon.
She's just gone. Yeah,
explanation. So anyway. So on the other side, of course, on the flip side of seeing Ahsoka and her season 7 Clone Wars side, we do see a young Count Dooku, so it's cool to see him in his younger state here. So, Jerry, do you want to take this other side and go over some of the folks on that side?
Sure. I'm going to start from the top though, because I don't know. I just feel like we should start from the top.
I agree.
So, from the top, well, you already mentioned Count Dooku there in the big one in the middle there,
right?
But then at the top we have Bail.
Yes, Bail Organa. And, of course, always good to see Bail.
Yes. And then next we have a young Qui-Gon, I think?
That's kind of what it's alluding to.
I think that was the young Qui-Gon, because there's also I'm pretty sure that's... yes, that is young Qui-Gon. So, very excited to see that. I think that's going to be really cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then we have Captain Rex.
Yes.
So, getting Captain Rex's return here. Always... cool to see him. Then after that, we have our very Clone Wars style Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is definitely the earlier. It's the earlier look that Obi-Wan Kenobi had in the Clone Wars, but looks better than those did. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is definitely his it's like end. Like, okay, if you're talking about timeline, so episode 2 of the saga, right, which is Attack of the Clones, it would be like the end of episode 2 right before beginning of Clone Wars, because if you look, he has his Jedi mullet, but he also has Clone Wars armor on, so kind of an interesting little detail.
Yeah
Anyway,
so then we have Ahsoka
yes,
just over on this side now,
again, just hanging out.
So kind of an interesting choice in my opinion to put Ahsoka again on there, but whatever.
No, right. They just ran out of characters and they're like, oh, I'm gonna put somebody.
And then under that we have do you remember what his name is? It's something weird.
Like the librarian. It's Jedi librarian.
Yarael Poof or something?
Yarael Poof.
Yarael
yeah,
Poof.
I think that's
I don't know. I know I'm saying it wrong, but you guys know who I'm talking about, or you don't. But however, I do want to note And I think there may be a
Oh
good
wait,
reason.
no, that's not Yarael Poof. Yarael Poof's like the
Another weird looking alien dude.
Yeah, that's.
Oh yeah,
that's not Yarael.
He's the one from High Republic. He's in the High Republic.
Yeah.
He's Jedi, one of the yeah. What is his name then? Now we got to know.
Yeah, I know. Well, if you remember though, she being Ahsoka had a significant moment with him. There's a whole episode in Clone Wars where he teaches her to be like patient and da da da.
Well, and the other reason I really want to bring mention to him is fairly certain he is the one we see dead in Kenobi.
Yeah, in this little like frozen
when they're showing
things.
all the different people that they have like pickled in the in there, and he's one of them.
It's Tara Sinube. Tara Sinube. Yeah.
Okay, I knew it had like a oob in there somewhere.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there's a oob.
I knew there was a oob.
There's a ooby gooby. Yeah.
So anyways, maybe we'll see his fate in here. You never know. And then we have Qui-Gon again, but this time it's Qui-Gon, older than what I believe.
You mean Count Dooku?
Yes.
Does not confuse the people here.
I'm sorry. Yes, he is Count Dooku, not Qui-Gon. Count Dooku. And here he has a beard and stuff, so I think it's supposed to be like the middle age one.
Yeah.
Because I think we essentially see him in all three stages of appearance. So we get like very young, middle age, and then we have like older, what we know, Count Dooku.
Right.
And it's kind of, I think, sort of the same for Ahsoka, but not as big of age gaps. But
yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, a lot said there, but very excited for this. Again, this is going to be something that I do believe you'll be able to sit down and
I just rammed into
and most likely be able to consume this whole 6-episode show
like
in
one
sitting.
Yeah.
Again, these are shorts. I watched the first episode at Celebration. I can't tell you, I wasn't like sitting there watching the clock.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it was still enough time to really get to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was like, oh man, that was just way too fast. But I would, it's definitely not like a 30-minute episode though.
Right.
I would expect more like 15 minutes or maybe 20.
And there will be 6 of them. So
there will be 6 of them.
Yeah.
So all that together will have a good feel to it.
Yeah.
And just an update for that, we will cover those, of course. We will have a whole review of the entire thing.
Yes.
In one, and so that might be a pretty big discussion.
Yeah.
I want to figure out how we do that with Andor. We'll let you guys know exactly if we maybe make those into 2 episodes, or I don't know. We'll talk about it, but let us know if you guys have a preference on how we do that. If
Yes,
you want
absolutely.
it all in one episode, us to review both the Andor episode of that week and this whole thing, or if you'd rather us do it separate,
like either or.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, but in the meantime, if you want to see that poster, like Drew said, you can go to our Facebook page. It's posted there. And further than that, it will be out on October 26th. So you can watch it after that.
So, moving on to our next news story here. Star Wars: The High Republic Phase 2 has officially launched. Starting with Path of Deceit, which just hit on Tuesday. I have it. I've started it. I'm probably about halfway through.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything to say just yet. I'm not sure where it's headed or what it's doing. It's been kind of slow so far. It hasn't really like hit anything, but there are parts of it that I'm pretty intrigued about. So, excited to see where it goes. I've heard lots of good things. I'm seeing people say it really hits about the last portion of the book is really, really good and really has some important stuff. So we'll see. But also the High Republic comic is going to start October 12th. So that's just right around the corner. So we'll see what that story has to tell as well. But then, of course, even after that, we will have the adult series Convergence. And that's going to be in November, as well as a junior novel coming in November. I can't remember the name of that one at the moment, but and then, all right, let's see. I have it right here. It is called Quest for the Hidden City. So that's coming out in November as well. And then we get the Battle of Jeddah at at the beginning of the year, which is going to be an audiobook, but also they're going to have a script version. But I think that's going to be a very intriguing one, because I think we're going to see basically what happens to Jeddah and why the Jedi are no longer on Jeddah, once we see in Rogue One. So
yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be interesting. Like I said, I kind of, I'll be honest with you, I've kind of refrained from reading it as of yet, and I'm kind of waiting on Andrew to tell me if this is
if
like,
you should read it or not.
Well, because as we discussed this in a prior episode, right? What is that in the first phase, there was 3 main adult books that were like, this is the story. Everything else, all these junior novels, these young adult novels, they're all supplementary, but the 3 main ones are these adult novels. And to be honest with you, I just have no interest in reading anything other than adult novel, frankly. And that's just me. So there's, like, again, per our prior discussion, they're starting off with a junior novel or a young adult novel. Excuse me. Yeah, and so I'm, like I said, I'm just kind of waiting on Andrew to tell me whether this seems to be the what I'm trying to say, like the main story, or it's like, oh no, later on they released it in Dolman.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So far, I couldn't tell you. Like I said, I'm about halfway through, but I really don't know. Like, I don't really know where they're headed with this yet. I do have a couple suspicions, but nothing I'm going to reveal, of course, right now.
Yeah.
But I will give my thoughts in a review on the book once I'm finished. Right. And we'll have it on the podcast. But until then, we'll just have to wait and see. But if any of you guys are reading it, if you guys have started it, let us know. I know JB said that his hadn't arrived yet. And,
poor JB. He's getting it late.
And so once he gets it, maybe he'll give some thoughts. And the rest of you, if you're reading it, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Our final news piece for this week is kind of a sad one. It was kind of inevitable, but a kind of sad one. And that is James Earl Jones, who is the classic voice of Darth Vader, who anytime we've seen or heard Darth Vader, when you hear his voice, it's James Earl Jones. He's a classic voice actor that reprised him from the very beginning all the way to A New Hope, right? It was James Earl Jones, and sadly, he is stepping away from the role of Vader. Again, I say it is sad, but it is kind of inevitable, because at the end of the day, folks, I mean, what he is, I'm just trying to look it up here. He is 91. He is 91 years old.
Yeah, it's old.
That's kind of old, yeah.
Kinda old.
And and at the end of the day, I watched a recent interview with him, and he looks old, and you can tell he's tired. Like he probably just does not have the energy to go out to a recording booth or recording studio and for days on end and record. He just doesn't have it in him. And you know what? I get it. It's sad, but it is kind of the course of things. But definitely very thankful for his contributions, of course, because again, he is the voice of Vader. When you hear Vader, like when I think of Vader, it's his voice. So
what's interesting about this is, for those of you who watch Kenobi, we see his name in the credits and such as the voice of Vader. And what's interesting though is that he did not actually voice Vader in Kenobi. Not really. It's kind of weird, but he basically said he was ready to wind down, and so when it came to Kenobi, he didn't really seem too interested, and so basically they had him sign off to allow the team to use his voice recordings.
Yeah.
And they essentially created a system to where they could utilize his voice.
Yeah.
And recreate it with like some kind of, digital voodoo.
Right.
And so that is how we get it in Kenobi. And honestly, I couldn't tell.
No.
And
yeah.
so,
until I read about it afterwards, I would have never thought,
Yeah. So, but it's interesting that like, instead of them doing like an official, like, hey, thanks to to him for all of James Earl Jones for all of his time as Vader and stuff, and now he's going to they instead they're just like still putting his name on the credits, and kind of letting it just go under the radar that he's not actually coming in the studio and doing this anymore.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah.
But I mean, still, regardless of him coming or not coming into the studio, at the end of the day, it's still his voice. I mean, they kind of gotta give him credit. And plus, again, you
gotta give him credit.
He's the institution. I mean, even if they did have somebody else come in as Vader, they still got to give him some credit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Anyway, so kind of sad news, but it is part of it. But thankfully, though, on a brighter note, is that they've worked out with him and his family, and with technology, that even though he may be stepping down from the role, we're still gonna have more beautiful, deep, bassy James Earl Jones voice as Vader in the future.
Oh, yeah.
So, all good stuff. So that concludes our news for this week. Now we're going to go into our rumors very quickly. And the first one is that we have a new update which reveals expected debut window for Star Wars Acolyte. And again, of course, this is just a rumor, but we've been hearing some whisperings and some rumblings about Acolyte recently. In fact, I think it was even just our last episode we were talking
about the Acolyte a lot lately.
Yeah. So it makes sense that we're getting some rumors as to when it's supposed to be releasing. So Drew, what do you have on that?
So the Bespin Bulletin has revealed that the Acolyte is set to begin filming this October, all the way through to May 2023, indicating that a potential 2024 release date could be expected for the series. Nerdist recently noted that the Acolyte could be released in either late 2023 or early 2024, which kind of, again, lines up with this timeline that we're getting from the Bespin Bulletin.
Yeah.
So I would say this is pretty accurate. However, it is, of course, kind of disappointing to think that we still have to wait that long.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think if we can get this in early 2024, that would be pretty great. Personally, I was hoping for a late 2023.
Yeah.
But that's probably going to be the Ahsoka spot.
Yeah,
if I was guessing.
I think we were talking about this this last episode. So
I would say that's going to kind of be where Ahsoka will be. So it makes sense that this will be the maybe spring or summer show for 2024.
Yeah, makes sense. And again, since we haven't heard basically anything, it kind of just makes sense that it's going to be that far out, because they're still kind of solidifying everything, who's going to be in it, what the story's going to be, the principal filming and all that stuff. So
right.
Yeah, it makes sense it's going to be that far out. So it is interesting that we're kind of starting to hear a few things here and there. So
yes. So moving on to our next rumor, Disney's ambitious plans for Star Wars gaming's future reportedly revealed. Now, we've talked a little bit about this before, but again, it's kind of been brought up, and so it's starting to really gain some ground here. And that is that Disney has requested that Lucasfilm ensures a new Star Wars video game is released every 6 months.
Whoa. Yeah,
so,
that's interesting.
There's, one gigantic issue in the world of game development,
and
that's crunch, right?
Right. As we've seen in the past several years, that's happened to almost every developer, every studio. That's been an issue with almost every AAA title that's came out.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's been a ongoing issue for many studios, many different games, and it's the age-old story of crunch. We want to release this game by this date, so you guys are having to work super long hours, long days, and you're not getting any kind of bonuses for it, et cetera, and they're worn out, they're upset about it, and then you got them saying, well, their game's not ready, and and you have the corporates saying, we don't care, this needs to be released by this time so we get our money.
Exactly.
And you saw it with Cyberpunk, you saw it with we could go on. We could start
most of the past couple Call of Duties.
But these games being released before they're actually ready, and the developers know and possibly are arguing that they aren't ready, but they get released anyway. And I say all that to say, Disney pushing Lucasfilm to, and again, this is a rumor, but if Disney truly is pushing Lucasfilm to release a Star Wars game every 6 months, that doesn't sound very good to me.
Yeah, I mean, what are they going to be putting out each of those times, and B, is that enough time to really dedicate? Is that enough time to dedicate what you need to create a good game? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Which now, obviously, we would assume that those are all under different studios or different developers or whatever.
Sure.
So they're having their own individual time to work on it. But again, it's still a pretty ambitious thing, you know. And and the last thing I'll say is, like, we also don't want to get burnout on Star Wars stuff too.
Right. And I think if you have enough teams involved, and we know there's actually quite a few teams working on Star Wars games right now. A lot of different rumors out there, but also confirmed Star Wars games that are being worked on right now.
Yeah.
And so if you have enough of them, then sure, maybe they can strategically plan it out to where they have plenty of time to make these games. But we saw it actually in the last Lego Star Wars game.
Yeah.
That, you know, there was a lot of crunch going on with that, unpleasant working conditions, to the point of a lot of complaints coming out. And now the game itself, I think, actually came out and is pretty impressive, really.
Yeah.
And we enjoy playing it, but you know, you see the vast worlds of that game and stuff, and honestly, to me, I'm like, man, maybe they shouldn't have forced them to put so much into this thing. And maybe that would have kind of been less about on the crunch. But I think that if you have a game coming out every 6 months, and they're like, okay, there has to be a game every 6 months.
Right.
So once they get to a certain developer and it's their turn and their game's not ready, are they going to force them to release it anyway?
Yeah.
Or are they going to say, oh, well, okay, we're going to push it back. We're not going to have a game
and so
until
a year later now instead of 6 months.
Be,
you know?
And how's that going to go down? And is that going to be acceptable? Just things to think about.
Yeah, and it's definitely something I feel like in the climate of gaming that we're in nowadays, they really do need to make that aware to people. You know what I'm saying? Because again, it's something that's definitely scary for a lot of people. Yeah.
And another thing, if you are, you know, you enjoy Star Wars, but maybe you're not the biggest gamer. Yeah. But let's say you heard about Jedi Fallen Order and you pick that up. Mm-hmm. It may take you 6 months to finish the game.
Yeah.
Because maybe you don't, you know, consistently play, or maybe it just takes you a while to get through a game because you're just not very good. I mean, these are legitimate reasons that it may take someone 6 months to get through a game. And so it's, for someone like you or me, it's nothing really, but for someone else, it could be harder for them to, like, oh no, another one's coming out, and I'm like,
I haven't even scratched the surface
of this one, and it could go to exactly what you said earlier. It could grow to this fatigue of Star Wars games, which right now we're hungry for them,
like,
right?
We want this,
we want them, but if we truly get them every 6 months, it might come a little overboard.
Yeah, absolutely. So totally agree, and we'll see if that comes into fruition. I doubt that we're going to get that. I imagine it might be some sort of hybrid of that, but only time will tell.
Only time will tell.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and jump into our releases for this coming week, and we have a pretty exciting one here for you on the 12th. On the 12th, we have the High Republic issue number 1. So that is going to be coming out that Wednesday. And so, of course, this will be the first issue in Phase 2. And then we also have Visions issue number 1. So it's my understanding this is a prequel to the Samurai... Or I don't know what they called that episode, but
I don't remember.
But you know who I'm talking about,
Ronin
right?
or something like that.
Yeah, the Ronin.
Yeah,
it's a sequel, or sorry, a prequel to that episode within this comic. So if you're interested in that, that also releases on the 12th. Also, we get Star Wars issue number 28, also on the 12th. So 3 new Star Wars comics for you guys on Wednesday, and then on the 14th, Also on the 12th, we have Andor episode 6. That will also be on the 12th. And then from there, we have... I guess that's actually really it if we're only covering 1 week. I'm used to covering 2 weeks, but if we're only covering 1 week, that is all that we have coming up.
Yes.
Of course, remember, in November, we will be having some more of the High Republic. So now would be a good time to pick up that first book that just came out. and read it and be ready for 2 new books in November.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so let's go ahead into our second to last thing here, and that is our community discussion. Again, as we say every time, it's definitely one of our more favorite things that we love to do. And our community discussion, if you're not familiar, is where we reach out every single time we're going to have an episode, and we ask one question, and we say, hey, folks, blah, 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 blah. And we would love to get your answers, and we're going to discuss them live on air. So this week's question is definitely something I didn't realize it was going to be as in-depth as it ended up being. I kind of just threw it out there and thinking like, oh yeah, it's an easy discussion thing.
We got people that
people like, yeah, we got people like writing books. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, oh man, I have like quite a few things I could say, right? Anyway, the community discussion topic for this week is that now that the Skywalker saga has been concluded, and we have had time to watch all of the movies, or several times for many of us, what is your favorite and least favorite things about each trilogy? So essentially saying, prequel trilogy, original trilogy, sequel trilogy, what is your most favorite thing about that one, and what is your least favorite thing about that one? So way we're going to kind of break this down is we're going to go ahead and go trilogy by trilogy, and then we're going to start with prequel, and we're going to say, all right, our least favorite things. And Drew and I are going to talk about ours, and then we're going to read your guys's, and then we're going to move on to the positive things, the things you like the most. Once that's done, we're going to move to original and go on from that style. So without further ado, our least favorite things from the prequel trilogy. So unfortunately, I think this is subject to a lot of scrutiny, right? I think a lot of people can pick fun at the prequel trilogy for good reasons here and there. So there is a lot of things that you theoretically could say. Now, I'm someone who did enjoy the prequel trilogy, but I have to admit there are things that I didn't love about it. And I'm going to be pretty general. I know like Alex Mason, he got pretty specific on the things that he likes and didn't like. But for me, I'm going to stay pretty general just for the sake of time. But for me, my least favorite things for the prequel trilogy were probably the CGI, right? And that's just a product of the time, and that's unfortunate, but it was a burgeoning new technology they had to use.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my biggest dislike, was probably the CGI. And like a close runner-up second would be like the dialogue and exactly how it was directed. I love the story, but just the minutia, the innuendos, like the little tiny things here and there, how they interacted with one another, and just some of the dialogue, it's just goofy, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't feel super organic. So that, coupled with the obviously very inorganic CGI, it can cause some problems there for me. And that is probably what I dislike the most about the prequel trilogy. So Drew, what do you dislike the most about the prequel trilogy?
I think for me it's definitely the kind of what you're saying, the dialogue, the kind of I guess it's just George Lucas's direction with the acting.
Yeah.
As much as I love, parts of the prequels, and we'll get to that, of course. But I think that that for me is that when I go back and I watch it, some of the dialogue is like, ooh, or the acting, you're like, oh, with Anakin sometimes, ugh. You got Jar Jar Binks just going around. You're just, ugh. I do a lot of those while I'm watching. Like,
kind of just cringes here and there. Like,
but I see where you're coming from with the CGI, but I'm a little more forgiving of that, I guess, because I understand the time it was, and at the time it was pretty impressive to people when they watched it when it first came out. But I think for me, I kind of just have learned to kind of overlook it because I know it was made back then.
Right.
So I don't think about that as much. But for me, it's definitely, I have to say, the dialogue and just the overall acting in the prequels is can be rough.
For sure. This thing, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this, just you brought it up. It's like the only reason I give it some flack for the CGI is because we have movies such as Lord of the Rings, right, that came out the same era, and it still holds up to this day because they didn't really lean heavy into that CGI. Now I know it's harder.
That's fair,
different, right?
Yeah,
because they're going from like fantasy to sci-fi, and there's so much more that would need to be, computer
right.
generated.
Like how do you create Coruscant?
But we did have 20 years earlier, we have the original trilogy, which didn't have all that and still did a pretty good purveying. Anyway, so I don't want to get too deep on that. That was my only complaint, because like,
Sure.
It is a product of the times, and I do look it over it. But
fair point.
Lord of the Rings and the original trilogy both show that like you could work around. Anyway, so I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on that. But JB says his least favorite is, quote, "I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere." Joking aside, I would say I don't have any real issues. But yeah, so JB's kind of just agrees with both of us that really it's the dialogue, right? It's just kind of like,
that's what he said in his own way, I think.
Yeah, it's basically saying it's like, it's this dialogue that's really throwing me off,
But hey, it makes for a lot of good memes and such.
It really does. So let's see here. So Alex Mason, the least favorite for prequels was how poorly written Padme falling in love with Anakin was. It's just like it happened out of thin air. The writing of how she fell in love with him could have been done better. So like I said, kind of a deep cut for Alex, right? But I mean, I totally know what you're saying, though.
Oh, I totally
get it. I think, unfortunately, they leaned into the fact that they knew that eventually they would get married, they'd fall in love, have kids, Luke and Leia, right? But at the end of the day, the whole point of a prequel is to show those things, right?
Yeah, and they never made a love story that we truly all like believed in, right?
right.
And we have multiple scenes where it's just the two of them and they're together, but you never truly like believe in it. They never really grip you with it. And a part of that kind of comes with the acting, the dialogue, things of that nature.
The sad part is
the direction of it.
Yeah, and the sad part is there's a couple deleted scenes from a couple of the different movies, right? But like the one I'm thinking of specifically is I think Attack of the Clones. There's a deleted scene, and it really starts like they go to visit Padme's mom and dad and sister, and they it really starts to flesh out the relationship and that budding relationship, and how she's like, her mom, Padme's mom, is like saying like, oh, hey, blah blah blah, and she's like, no, he's my protector and stuff. But then like they're like, she's like, I know you like, it was just those little moments that would have been really good to have, and they cut them out like every movie does, it seems.
Yeah.
So let's get on to what our favorite thing is, or favorite things are about the prequel trilogy. So again, I'm staying kind of on a higher level, and there's a lot of things that I could say. I love, of course, seeing my favorite character, Obi-Wan, in his prime. I mean, that's kind of the easy cop-out answer, right? I love seeing him in his prime, so that's one of my favorite things about the prequel era or prequel trilogy. But again, it also, I guess, kind of another cop-out answer. But what I really love, and although it had its faults and it was on the cusp of being destroyed, we get to see the Jedi Order. We get to see the like what it should have been like to some degree. Again, we have the corruption and the blah blah blah. It was about to fall, but we get to see what it was like to have a bunch of Jedi fighting together and planning together and stuff. For instance, on Attack of the Clones, episode 2, we could see the Battle of Geonosis, where they're going and again, it's just so cool to see all these Jedi fighting together against one force. Yeah. So that would definitely be probably my favorite thing about prequel trilogy. Drew?
Yeah, I would say for me, it's the world building that it did, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of what you're saying there is like, so much of what we now just accept in Star Wars came from the prequel trilogy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we didn't know or fully understand as far as Jedi and go, and a lot of things that the prequels set into motion.
Yeah.
And now we just, it's just fact to us. But again, it's because George Lucas came in and he set these prequels, and it felt like an existing world. Just like that's one thing I think you can't argue with, in my opinion, is that going into the prequels, it feels like an existing lived-in world that has history and has rules to it and things that they go by and follow.
Yeah.
And it so, in a way, so perfectly melds into what we get into the original trilogy and calls back on things that the original trilogy mentioned.
Yeah.
And he pulls some of that, and then he just blows it into this huge thing that came from references.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original trilogy just mentions the Clone Wars, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just one small little discussion.
Exactly.
And George Lucas took that and created
here's this whole thing.
Yeah, you know? and creates this massive series and movies that we have now came from things like
little
that.
references
and so
here and there. Yeah.
I love what he establishes in the prequels. And how that has grown into Star Wars canon in so many different directions. So that would be my answer.
Absolutely, yeah. So for JB, he says his favorite part about the prequels is simply hello there. And obviously all the memes. So
for JB, it's just the memes. Just the memes.
I'm going to extrapolate a little bit here, and I think where JB's going is that he likes the cultural significance of the prequels. I think that's what he's getting at, is that he's trying to say that yes, there's a lot of memes but let me phrase that. But there's many things that comes from the prequels that it's a meme, but we know what it is. Like hello there. Like if someone ever says hello there, you always say General Kenobi. So I think it's like maybe the cultural significance of those movies, although they're cheesy and goofy sometimes.
Sure,
it is cool because it has that cultural significance. So I'm assuming that's what JB means. Maybe JB's like, no, you're just taking way too much out of my words.
Well, and I think, and no, it's so true though, because a lot of us grew up with the prequels, and so we all naturally use it in memes and such, and we all kind of understand where we're coming from, and it's a beautiful thing, really.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So for Alex, he says his favorite thing about the prequels is Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship and their duel in Revenge of the Sith. So absolutely, yeah. Oh, yeah. Seeing again, kind of what Drew was saying, right? Is that budding of or the fleshing out of the things we already know existed. We know that Obi-Wan knew my father, as Luke would say. Well, how now we have an entire trilogy showing that relationship. So totally. So let's move on to the original trilogy. So we're gonna go through our least favorite parts of the original trilogy. Okay. And honestly, I just didn't have a lot to say on this.
I say, watch it.
And I think honestly, my least favorite parts. And again, I'll just say it. So my least favorite part is definitely a sign of the time, but it's the kind of simplicity of like the fighting and the combat and the effects. Now, don't get me wrong, and again, I can flip that right around and say the effects are amazing for the time, but if I'm just sitting here watching it today, you know what I'm saying? It's unfortunately one of those things where sometimes I can get a little lost, because you're like, oh man, that's kind of goofy, or it pulls me out of the realism and stuff. And another thing is, and this is actually one of my positives, but I'll kind of pull it into a negative as well and say that like sometimes
spoilers.
And some spoilers for Bong saying like 5 seconds. But one thing I also kind of don't like about it is just the fact that, again, a product of the time is that sometimes it can be a little slow, and it's just like it drags on in some places just because in this time of the 70s and 80s, that was just how they wrote movies. Like there would be scenes where like people would just be walking for like 45 seconds. They're like, why would you include that? And it's not that bad in the original trilogy, but there is some of that kind of stuff in there. So at the end of the day, I don't really have any huge complaints with the original trilogy, but if there was something, I would say that. So what about you?
I'm in the exact same boat as you. I think if there's anything with the original trilogy, it's all just related to the fact that, it is, very old at this point, over 40 years old.
Yes.
And so, it kind of comes, there are flaws to today's standards because of that. A lot of it comes with design and things of that time. So it's again kind of like what I said with the prequels, easy to look past because of those reasons. And understanding some of that, but I do think it does kind of hurt it a little bit now when you go back and watch it, and you see like, man, and like a perfect example, Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi's fight, right? And to this day, it does kind of hurt me when I watch that.
You're just
thinking
like,
of what it could be
so much more. It could have been so much more.
And some people have made it more.
There's
some pretty cool edits out
really
there.
Cool. Yeah.
But and here's the thing, one day, you know, you can be absolutely disgusted with me, but you know it's true. One day they're gonna remake the original trilogy. One day we may be old.
We may be gone.
We may be gone.
I doubt that. I don't know,
but one day Disney's gonna go, you know what? We're restarting.
This is such a profitable franchise.
We're restarting.
We're gonna just reboot everything.
We're starting with the beginning.
Yeah.
And you're gonna and they're gonna remake those.
We will make it into our own image.
That's absolutely a terrifying thought to me.
Yeah,
I mean, absolutely terrifying. But anyway. But again, it's just kind of the sign of the times with it, and it's hard to even call it a flaw because it is literally just because of the time period, and it was still very impressive.
I was gonna say, and at the time in which they created it was actually like the most mind blowing like innovation. Yeah. But anyway,
right.
So JB's least favorite thing about the original trilogy is how Luke is portrayed in A New Hope. He is a typical teenager with teenage angst, I suppose, but compared to what we now know of Leia, how she is involved with all sorts and stuff, that just seems so silly to me. So I definitely get where you're coming from, JB. It is kind of weird, right? Because we get Leia, who's just like, she's this established leader and she's fierce and she's grown up and she's already went through all of this stuff, right? She's already went through this entire Kenobi series as a child, going and fighting and doing all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And then also now we finally get to Luke in New Hope, and also now he's just some goofy kid trying to go get power converters from Tosche Station, arguing with his mom and dad.
I mean, I get where he's coming from. But I will say, you know, it's kind of Obi-Wan's fault because he brought Luke to Tatooine.
Well, it's also maybe like Uncle Owen's fault, but anyway.
Well, yeah, true, but you know, Luke lived a normal farm boy life. That's kind of the point. He's this pure, innocent farm boy that eventually gets thrown into the rebellion. And becomes a hero, but a lot of what the point of the character of Luke is to be just a young, naive farm boy.
And he's being thrust into this world
where
of like
Leia, she's been involved in it since a child because she went to a not only into politics and in a political family, but also to someone who was a rebel sympathizer, right? And was it was a reason for the beginning of the rebellion. So obviously and naturally, she becomes a fighter and a leader because of that. So I don't necessarily look at it in a negative way, but I do understand.
Honestly, I think at the end of the day, it's like I think that's actually part of what makes the story good, basically what you're saying. But I think I understand where JB's come from, is like how it was necessarily handled. Like it was just like this just drastic change between Tosche Station to Empire Strikes Back, where he's just like this leader now. You know?
Oh, you mean Return of the Jedi? Or
I'm saying that he still is kind of like a bit of a leader in Empire. Like whenever they're at Hoth and.
I think he's still pretty farm boyish in Empire.
I don't know.
I feel like, I mean, yes, you see growth, but I think Return of the Jedi is where you're really like. Oh,
okay. Yeah, he's
something's
changed.
happened.
Yeah,
and this is not the Luke we knew.
Right
now, of course, if you're following
like
comics
and stuff,
you really understand all of the things it takes and things he goes through to get to that point. And he goes through a lot more adventures than just what the movie shows us. But yeah, I think originally when people saw that, they're like, whoa, and you'll actually read. People that went to the theater and watched Return of the Jedi that thought, "Oh, Luke's bad now." That was watching it for the first time. People thought he was
evil.
He had turned evil.
Yeah,
and I don't even know if they used like Sith yet because I don't even know if like.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Think so.
Yeah.
He's turned to the dark side.
But he was he was a dark side user or something,
So let's so obviously that progression is the main part of the story, right? Where that's part of the main narrative. But JB, we're saying that we do get where you're coming from. So we're not saying that you're we're not trying to disprove what you're saying. So don't take that.
We get what you're saying. We just don't think you're right. I'm just kidding.
I'll let Andrew say that.
I'm kidding. I love to mess with you guys.
I'm going to defer. Anyway, so Alex.
No, here's the thing. we we love to give our answers and then judge your guys' answers.
And then absolutely judge because we
Because
can't
you
be
can't-
wrong, and you guys
because
most
you
likely can't be
guys
right.
Can't stop us. You're not here to. You're not here to defend yourself for your.
Unfollow. Bad review. No, I don't understand why this happened.
Why did they give us a 1 star?
Okay, so we have so much more to go. So Alex Mason's least favorite thing of the original trilogy was Obi-Wan and Vader's fight in A New Hope. I feel like the Obi-Wan Kenobi series helped me not mind how bland the fight in A New Hope is. I know that there wasn't as much story then as there is now. It was difficult storyline wise to come from Revenge of the Sith into A New Hope because of that fight. So that's basically what we had said too, right? It's like we see this. Again, product of the times, right?
I will say though, I'm curious, Alex, how Kenobi helped you with that. I would like to know. I would like to know more about that.
Yeah.
Please comment on this episode and tell us.
I think honestly, I don't know how it helped him, but I will say that maybe seeing another good fight brought his hopes up, or you know what I'm saying, like it made him happy.
Well, I just know if there was something plot wise that made him like it. Because
I don't know if there would be anything plot wise. So yeah, please let us know.
Just curious on that.
So, all right. So moving to our most favorite things of the original trilogy, and again, it's such a generic answer, but it's like I think with me the most favorite thing of the original trilogy is simply just the story. I mean, this was the grassroots start of Star Wars, and it truly was just a phenomenal story. Like if you were just to strip it all away, take away the sci-fi elements and stuff, it really was a really good story of, again, like you said, this farm boy who is naive and whatever, being thrust into this world of chaos and imperialism and whatnot, and having to fight against that and learn how to become a man in that. It's the hero's journey. It's the classic hero's journey, right? But then on top of that, seeing this crazy, wild familial relationship between his sister and then his dad and then all this stuff, it was a really good story, and that has to be easily my favorite. And again, I guess if you want to dive deeper into that, you can say the character building and the world building is what I really enjoyed about the original trilogies, because they took their time with it, but it wasn't so much time that you get lost in the sauce type thing. I feel like they do a very good job of setting up what this world's about, who these characters are, their background, and how they intermingle with one another. And I think they do it phenomenally. That's definitely my favorite part. So, Drew, what about you? What's your favorite thing about the original trilogy?
Man, what to say?
I know.
I mean, first of all, it's the beginning, right? It's what started it all. So,
right.
So of course that naturally, I love about it, and I love that, we have everything that we have today because of this original trilogy.
Yeah.
But what I will say, I think what I really love most about the original trilogy is the love and care that you feel when you watch the original trilogy.
Well, it's making manifest someone's dream, someone's idea, and that's being fleshed out.
It's like, today, so many movies come out, and sometimes you can sit and you can watch a movie and you go, oh, this was literally made just for money. Like they don't care about this.
Yeah.
They don't care about this this movie. They don't care about the plot. They don't care about anything. They've taken something usually from like a book that somebody loved
and adapted on it.
And they adapted it for money, and the love and the passion is not there.
I was going to say it's clearly was never someone's passion project,
Star Wars, especially the original trilogy, you can feel the love and the care and the passion.
Oh yeah,
throughout all three of those movies, and you can just see it so strongly.
Yeah,
and I'll throw out a little love for the Mando series, Mandalorian season 1 and 2, because I feel that when I watch those. I feel that love and passion and
just authenticness, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's authenticity,
I feel it there too when I watch those, and it's just because there's a team involved here that really wants to see these do well, and they don't really care about it for the money. George Lucas, he couldn't care about this movie. I mean, trust me, he wanted to make money, but he didn't make this movie thinking it was going to be a huge blockbuster. He made the movie because he had a passion for the story and he wanted to see this world come to life. And so when it did, of course, they were able to make more, and it's an awesome thing. And so I think that the passion that you see that this world created is my favorite part about the original trilogy.
For sure. Very well said.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and go to our comments. Kind of lost my place here.
I'm going to go grab my laptop real quick because my iPad died.
Okay. So JB's favorite thing about the original trilogy, he says, the original trilogy, my favorite bit is the whole of Empire Strikes Back. Yes, good lad. That is the best one of the bunch. And he says, I love the beginning on Hoth and Snow Speeders. Shame about Dax. Yes, it is a shame, first of all. And second of all, I completely agree with you because, again, the Hoth and the Snow Speeders and just that whole battle, and again, it kind of like harkens back to what I had said. It's such an amazing world building scene and moment there, and it was just so awesome to see that. I don't know this, and I could be speaking out of my rear end right now because I usually do, but seeing that, I feel like that's the first time in modern cinema where you had seen, or at least one of the first times you've seen, like just this huge snowy plain, and then people interacting with each other in this snowy place. It's just so I totally agree. I think that it was very revolutionary to start off Empire and Hoth and having these interactions and stuff. It adds such incredible scale to this already huge universe. So completely agree with you, JB.
Yeah, me too.
Oh yeah, he just sat
I have
down.
no
Don't
idea
let
what
him.
he said.
Don't let him trick you.
I'm sure I do though, because JB is very smart.
Yeah, very wise young man. So Alex's favorite thing about the originals was that Luke's character development. And in parentheses, he says, he's my favorite, so maybe I'm biased, but I love how he went from being a whiny, borderline annoying kid, acts before he speaks, farm boy.
Interesting. So we have one person that said
that was the negative part of it.
That's the negative part, and another person that said it's why they like it.
So intriguing. He says, before he speaks, a farm boy to a wise Jedi and great leader that thinks before he acts. Chef's kiss.
Intriguing. Okay.
So I think, and again, not to dog on JB, right? Because I think JB's point was maybe it was how it was handled or how it was perceived necessarily.
I don't know. He can't defend himself.
I know, JB. You can't say anything. So I'm trying to help you, man, but I can't. No, but for real though, that is a great point. And
obviously,
again,
JB is just a Luke hater. He's just a Luke Skywalker hater.
You hate Luke Skywalker? Oh my gosh. So Alex, what you said again kind of harkens back to what a lot of us are saying, right? It's just this amazing character and world building that the original trilogy had. So we still have this next trilogy to go.
It's all right.
It's all right. All right. So the last one, of course, being the sequel trilogy. So the least favorite thing about the sequel trilogy. And unfortunately for a lot of people, there is a lot that could be said about their least favorite things about the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, boy.
Unfortunately, this trilogy was spotted with a lot of issues from the get-go, right? From the beginning, and again, I don't want to take this time to just straight up dog on the sequel trilogy because that was not the point of this community discussion. But I will say there is a lot of issues outside of the movies themselves, right? Because of the issues with the the infighting of the directors basically and the writers and how everything was presented and then the marketing and then it's just all this different stuff. So, but I will say definitely for me, just to leave it all on the table and just be simplistic, is with me, my least favorite thing about the sequel trilogy was definitely two things. The more broader spectrum is I did not like how the story was portrayed, right? I think they just botched it because basically at the end of the day, we had The Force Awakens, which, it was different. I mean, there's people who complained that it was basically a copy of New Hope. But for the most part, right, I mean, I liked the direction they were going. There was this new villain who was just pert near omniscient, or omnipotent, should I say. And like he's just so powerful, and we just never seen the like of him. And we have this new character who's still connected with the characters we know and love to some degree, but we don't know fully how. And blah 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 blah. And then all of a sudden in Last Jedi, we got this new director who just like wants to put his mark in Star Wars history by, and he did, by basically saying like, I'm going to just flip everything on its head, and everything that they establish is going to be the exact opposite. And that is an interesting style choice of what you could do with a trilogy, but when it's the final trilogy of a saga for something that's beloved of Star Wars, stupid idea. So I think that was the biggest problem, is that then finally on the third movie, they got the first movie's director, who then basically tried to reflip everything that the second director did. You know what I'm saying? It's just this jumbled mess, and it was just stupid, and very frustrating for me. That was definitely my least favorite part. And then in terms of like deeper, closer down, I know it's petty, but I do not like what they did with Luke. I did not like how they destroyed his character, basically. And again, this is the more petty part. I did not like how they try to co-opt Rey into the Skywalker, and they made it more of like a title rather than a name. So that's kind of the easy hot button things that most people would probably say. But anyway, Drew, what is your least favorite part about, or thing about, the sequel trilogy?
Well, like I said with what we liked about the original trilogy, I said that it's, there are people that create movies just for money.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that what I see out of the sequel trilogy is a lot of people that decided, let's make another Star Wars trilogy with money as the main focus. And and I think that we had people involved that cared, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
People that really cared, but never in a place
that actually mattered. Right?
That actually mattered
right.
enough.
The people who really cared were in a position that was kind of like lower level. They didn't have the sway over things.
That's what it seems, at least. Because
apparently
what we get is a lack of direction. And I've said many times how I feel about the sequel trilogy, and how I feel, it is a convoluted mess, and it lacks direction. It goes one way, and then the next movie goes another way, and just kind of like what you were just saying.
Yeah.
And I think that in the argument that is made, and even why they basically say they did what they did, is, well, when George Lucas started, he didn't necessarily know what his plan was. He just started it, but
he did have a story.
Had a different director. But here's the thing: George Lucas was George Lucas. It was his vision.
It was
his
vision. So no matter who the director was, or the co-writers, or the ghostwriters,
George Lucas
he was the one
still there, and
guiding and directing the story.
And we don't have that person here. MCU
right.
has Kevin Feige.
Right.
Kevin Feige's hands are on everything in the MCU.
Little grubby hands.
And there's a reason why the MCU has stayed so consistent. And some people would disagree with me maybe on that, but I think for the most part, MCU has been very consistent in quality and in its story. And I think that is because Kevin Feige watches all of it like a hawk. And Star Wars needed that.
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars needed that when they made that trilogy, but they didn't have it. And
they did not.
And that's why we got what we got.
Yeah.
And a lack of direction, and it feels like each movie didn't understand what happened in the other movie, and it's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And that's
it is what it is.
I mean, I could go into so much.
You
more
have so
detail,
much more to say, but
you guys pretty much know how I feel about it anyways. And I will. Well, let me just throw one last thing. They did Luke Skywalker dirty. That's all the rest of it.
It's like, it's already been stated. It will be stated again, but I have to personally say it. I have to personally say it because it hurt me that bad. So JB's least favorite thing about the sequel trilogy was that is Finn. I really like the character, but he was wasted in my eyes anyway. So
he was wasted.
He was wasted. There's a lot more that he could do or could have been, but especially starting in Last Jedi, all he did up until the end of Rise of Skywalker was just yells Rey's name.
The entire trilogy teased him being a Jedi, teased him being a Force user, right?
Yeah.
And eventually becoming a Jedi, but never actually got anywhere with it.
And didn't even do anything else with it. Yeah, it was wasted. I mean,
it's still just being teased by the end of Rise of Skywalker.
I know, like, it's the end. What are you teasing for? Like, just end it, or say either it's gonna happen or it's not. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. Yeah. So yes, totally agree with you, JB. And then Alex Mason's least favorite thing about the sequel trilogy is the way Luke was wrote. I'm just going to leave it at that. Don't get me started. So clearly, Alex, we have the same thoughts and opinions on that. So last but not least, our favorite things about the sequel trilogy. And so I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Regardless of whether you like the directions of the movies and the storyline and the character development, blah, 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 you cannot deny the fact that they are beautiful, beautiful, well-made movies. In terms of the art style, the set direction, world building, in terms of how it looks. Like visually, it is an incredibly visually appealing trilogy from start to finish. And I will say that obviously you're not going to get that level of bombastic, crazy sci-fi beauty and amazingness hardly anywhere other than the sequel trilogy. I mean, they did a great time. The sound design was great. I mean, again, you can say you hate The Rise of Skywalker, but you cannot tell me that you did not brown your drawers whenever Palpatine let out that column of lightning into the sky.
Oh, man.
It was like,
whoa. Well, I mean, we were
in the theater too.
We were in
right?
the theater at Dolby Cinema, the Dolby Cinema.
Yeah.
Which is like top tier in the visual and audio, and
that literally
just like blew us away.
It gave me almost like heart palpitations because ironic palpitations anyway, because it was like so loud and so rumbly, like it hit me in the chest. I was like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
So you can't tell me that wasn't amazing. But again, now the fact that Palpatine himself was there in the first place, like you could be mad at that, but my favorite thing about it was just how beautiful and amazing the worlds and the environments were. The worst part of the entire stinking trilogy for me was the Cantabite garbage in Last Jedi. But you know what? Cantabite was beautiful. They did a great job designing Cantabite. Anyway, in terms of like a more specific thing too, I will say I really actually did at the end of the day like Kylo. He was probably my favorite character for sure from the sequel trilogy. Could he have been done better? Potentially, yes. Did I like the direction that they took him? Killing them, whatever else, right? Yeah, it could be argued, but at the end of the day, I have to admit, I did like Kylo by the end of it all. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So those are my favorite parts of the sequel. I can't speak at the end. I'm getting just overwhelmed here, I guess. I don't know. Those are my favorite parts of the sequel trilogy. Drew, what are yours?
For me, it's the artistic direction they had, the visuals, the sound. It's all gorgeous, and that's absolutely my answer. Is, I'm not a huge fan of The Last Jedi, but
yeah,
anytime I'm wanting to like test like my TV, like my coloring and stuff, if I ain't messing with that or messing with someone else's, I'll pull up The Last Jedi because it has so many beautiful images there, and like I mean the throne room, Snoke's throne room, right? Like that red is just
that was so good. It looked so good,
just amazing. And so I mean, one thing that I really don't know anyone can argue against is how visually impressive the sequel trilogy is. It's gorgeous, and all three of them have really great things. The Force Awakens, I still think of the first time we see Snoke in that really dark room, but you see this huge projected vision of Snoke, right?
Yeah.
And you see the base that they're in, which is like a callback to being on Yavin 4 and stuff like that's beautiful. And then The Last Jedi with Crate and with the throne room, and then in Rise you get the that whole last thing with what's it called?
Exegol?
Exegol, yes, thank you. On Exegol, and some people argued it was too blue. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
And the sequel trilogy is full of just mind-blowing visuals, and also shout out to The Last Jedi when Luke is with Yoda. Possibly my favorite definitely one of my very favorite scenes of all
trilogy,
the sequel trilogy.
Yeah,
is when
good.
Yoda and Luke are together.
Yeah,
and Yoda catches the tree on fire. And says, "Page turners, they were not." Because he's like, "Oh, the ancient texts."
The ancient texts, no.
Page turners, they were not.
Such a great meme on that one too. And that because that's a dual reason why that's cool. Because you get to see like the OG Yoda that you see from the OG trilogy, right? And then secondarily also too because it's cool because. Yeah, it's all the sacred texts, but at the end of the day, those sacred texts are what led to the Jedi, and the Jedi ultimately fell. And so it was cool because basically Yoda isolated himself on...
but we also learned that they weren't in there.
It did survive, yeah.
Rey had them.
But
so this is getting into the whole thing, but a lot argue that Yoda actually knew they weren't in there.
Yeah,
which is why he let it burn. But that's all up to interpretation.
Yeah, because it could be like a cool... ending arc for Yoda himself because he learned from the mistakes and he's gonna let it burn. Right. Or B, Yoda knew that it was gone, but he let it be a good lesson for Luke himself.
Right.
Anyway,
it's a whole thing.
So it's a whole thing. So I was kind of like not sure how to do this. So Corey, I apologize, but Corey Allen Wise, his comment kind of like meshed the things that he liked and didn't like about the sequel trilogy into one comment, so I'm kind of just gonna have to read it as one thing. So if it has some things he doesn't like, it's because they're all kind of mixed together. So anyway, so he says, as much as people will hate on it, Rise of Skywalker was actually a good movie. I was thrilled when Force Awakens came out just to be disappointed. I was not a fan of Finn using a lightsaber. No normal person should be able to use one easily. The Last Jedi was just terrible, lol. They did Luke dirty. Just glad we have the Mandalorian to redo him and make him what he should be. That's the short version. So and Corey, there's a lot to be said about a lot of the things that you mentioned, kind of similar to what all of us were saying. Yeah, none of us liked what they did to Luke. So Mando redeeming him, that has been really nice. And then Finn, he wasn't a master with it, but him even using it to some degree was a little kind of like, so I get you. But, you say that you did really like Rise of Skywalker and that you enjoyed that movie. And, again, while there's some things that I personally, it was like, I don't know that I love about it. Again, you can never say that it wasn't a visually appealing movie. Seeing Dark Rey and all that stuff, it's so good. So let's go back to the original, or not the original, but the newest post of that. So JB's favorite thing about the sequel trilogy is that he says, well, I actually really enjoyed them. My favorite has to be seeing a dark side Rey, and not forgetting Babu Frick. Love me some Babu Frick.
Yo, can't wait to see.
Dude.
Can't wait to see Babu Frick and his Babu Frick brother hanging out with Grogu.
Roger Frick.
Can't wait to see what they come up with for that.
Yeah, there's gonna be some good stuff there.
Man,
yeah.
Babu Frick is the best. I do love Babu Frick.
Definitely the best part of the sequel trilogy.
Good stuff.
Anyway, so and then Alex Mason's favorite part was simply the cinematography. The movies look beautiful, short and sweet, and it's exactly what both of us said. So we have gone so long on this, but guys, thank you so much for participating in this. Again, it was really fun. It was fun. This was basically going to be like our main topic because it took so long. But with that said, we have had a great time discussing this with you, and seeing what we both like and don't like, because we have a lot of a lot of times we just kind of dog on the sequel trilogy and we praise the OG trilogy and even prequels sometimes, right? But it's cool to see both sides from people. What are some of the things that you don't like about the OG trilogy, and what are the things that you do like about the sequel trilogy? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I thought it was really fun. I'm glad you guys participated. Thank you so much. It's amazing hearing from you guys. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us, if you want to just talk about anything, we'll love to talk to you. So.
For Sure.
But without further ado, let's get into our final actual main topic. And that is review and kind of going over of Andor episodes 4 and 5.
Yeah.
So go ahead and spoiler, right?
Yeah, so we're going to go straight into spoilers here. We're not going to do what we used to do. We used to be like, oh, okay, we're going to do not spoilers. Oh, we really liked it. Or, oh, we really didn't like it. But it was just
all right, so let's go into spoilers.
But we're going to go straight into spoilers. But, Braxton, just to kind of just start us off here.
Yeah.
To make it very clear to everybody, we have not discussed these episodes at all. We have not said a word to each other about either one of these episodes.
Correct. Yes.
We left in our last episode. We left where you didn't really know if you were really into this. And I left a little more positive, but I was still like, let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
So we've now seen 2 more episodes. Where do you stand right now?
So I would unfortunately say, due to the content that we've gotten, I'm still kind of where I'm at. Okay. I still feel like I'm just not hooked yet. I personally feel, and I don't want to dive too deep into this right already, but I do feel like they kind of wasted these 2 episodes. I just feel like episode 2, right, was just a drag. I felt like there's just so much going, or so little going on. And then I feel like episode 4 and 5 were kind of like that again, where there was some cool stuff, don't get me wrong, and I'll get into what I liked about it. But it just felt like basically the same stuff was just happening over and over again. They kept reiterating the same thing in different ways. I just didn't feel like there was a lot of movement or progression. And yeah, they kind of, you could say they fleshed out that issue with Clem being hired. But I think that could have happened. That could have happened like a 30-minute or 30-second thing, not a whole episode. But so unfortunately, I do think that my opinion is still kind of the same as it was last week. Now, I will say that we did get some cooler stuff though. In episode 4, we did get I'm trying to remember the guy's name, like the older guy. I can't remember his name. What is it? Luthen. So we got Luthen, and he's like, he's like dressing up, and he's getting all like in a costume, and he's like looking in the mirror, like trying to like compose himself into a different character. And so he runs this little shop to like gather secrets about people and stuff. And this whole part really carried both episodes for me, to be honest with you. Luthen was this, very cool to see his change in demeanor and stuff like that. It was cool that he runs like an antique shop, and we get to see a lot of really cool references to different things. Whether
we'll
that
talk
be
about some of that.
Okay, well, we'll wait on that. But we see a lot of cool references, and then of course Mon Mothma, right? That's the best part, right? Seeing this very important, pivotal character in the rebellion, right? Yeah. Seeing her starts in the very beginning, it was very cool to see them interact in the shop and all this stuff like that. I will say, unfortunately, though, aside from that, like I just wasn't, just nothing stuck out to me other than that. So Drew, now flipping the script to you, you left it on a more positive note. What are your thoughts now?
I think I'm even more positive on it.
Oh, okay. Well, so let me. I didn't finish what my thought was. I was gonna say I'm still kind of the same, but because of some of those scenes, I'm kind of like trending towards the upward. I guess what I'm saying. So I'm not just the same.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of like, just not hasn't hooked me, but there is a slight upward trend.
Gotcha. Yeah. So this show definitely is slower than anything we've ever gotten in Star Wars. Okay, as far as like, there's not big action set pieces every other minute. There's not. Honestly, there's a lot of sitting around talking, and there's a lot of dialogue. And I think it's definitely more of a character study. You know, it's definitely a slower, more dramatic, just like a character study is the best way I can put it right now.
Right.
And kind of a character study on the rebellion in a sense, and the oppression of the Empire. And I think that it definitely has its slow moments, right? There's not a whole lot to. when I finish an episode of this, I'm like, okay, I'm not going, whoa, you know, like, yo.
It's not Mandalorian where
yeah,
like, I can't wait to watch the next one.
Yeah,
you
like
know?
Mandalorian, you know, it's just like, and here's this big surprise, and here's this big.
Yeah.
You're not getting that in this,
right?
But for me, I don't necessarily need everything in Star Wars to be that,
right?
And so what I found in Episode 4. Specifically, I found very compelling for a couple different reasons.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really started to boost my positivity towards it was Coruscant.
Yeah.
When we hit Coruscant, I went, oh, okay.
That was one of the things that made me think like, okay, yeah, I'm finally getting to Star Wars, you know?
Yeah, this is Star Wars, right? We're on Coruscant. And we see multiple different locations on Coruscant. And like, that's a dream. We haven't really done that since the prequel trilogy.
Right.
Not really. I mean, we've gotten a couple glances here and there, but this, like, truly, you're like hanging out on Coruscant, right?
Yeah.
And that's so cool. And visually, extremely impressive. It looks amazing. So much better than what they showed us in the prequels.
Oh yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so I love that. But let's kind of talk through episode 4.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of bring up stuff as we go. But the episode starts with Andor on the ship with Luthen, and he's discussing, you know, living in the shadows of the Empire.
Yeah.
And Cassian's tending to his arm. And Cassian, you know, he believes there's no point in fighting the regime head on.
Right.
Luthen isn't convinced spending every day hiding and running from the inevitable is worth it, right? So they kind of having this clash on opinions here. And he tells Cassian, though, that he'll pay him to join a group of rebel fighters on an important, dangerous mission. More credits than Cassian could have ever hoped for.
Right.
I mean, it's actually a ton of credits.
Like 30,000 credits.
It's 200,000.
Oh, was it?
It's 200,000 credits.
Never mind.
I think. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I thought it was 200,000.
Oh no! What I'm thinking of is the fact that he gave him a down payment.
He gave him a down payment
of the Sky Kyber, which is 30,000. That's what I'm getting at. Anyways, yeah.
So the first big thing here, the first thing, and this is kind of just discussing more like what if and what does this mean, is what game is he playing here?
Right.
Because there is no way this dude's paying him $200,000.
Right.
No way.
So here's an interesting example of that, right? So we touched down on the planet, and I'm trying to remember what it's called.
The planet that
this conspiracy is going on. Aldhani,
yeah.
So they touched down on Aldhani. So Luthen and Andor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what appears to be some cohort of Luthen, which it almost feels like his daughter. That I don't know. This is how he talked to her and stuff like that. We don't have that confirmation. I'm just throwing that out there. It kind of seems like that. Clearly, that they have some sort of relationship there.
It does kind of seem like it's maybe like a daughter or something.
Yeah.
That's the way I felt when I watched
like
it.
A niece or something, you know.
But they never
say that.
They never say that, and they never. There does seem to be some kind of closer relationship there.
That's what I'm getting.
And
It's very close
he almost like
relationship.
gets into like a fatherly get reprimands her.
Exactly.
And like, but anyway.
So my point is that you talk about like there's no way he's paying that kind of money, and at the end of the day, when they touch down and he's telling her about Clem, you know, or Andor. Because he takes on the name of Clem, and
it makes me think of Clementine from The Walking Dead every time.
Makes me think of an orange, a clementine orange. Anyway,
or that
too.
I'm such a nerd.
You're such a weirdo.
Weirdo nerd.
You know, well, I'm a nerd about oranges. Okay, for real though. So
I'm an orange nerd.
We keep going like 1,000 different paths on this. What I'm trying to say is that he's not going to get paid that, because she even says like we're eating, you know, we're camping out in the mud and eating rations and and you're going to pay him that kind of money. And what I'm thinking is that ultimately he's trying to get Clem, or I keep saying that, but basically anytime you're trying to get Andor in there, and he's going to finally find his purpose, and he's going to find his passion, and he's not going to want the money because he's like so enveloped in the rebellion, because we ultimately do see that, right? He goes in Rogue One and freaking dies, you know.
Yeah.
so yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I think you're totally right.
Yeah. So after that, you know, he tells him the job is a heist. stealing a large sum of money from the Empire, which I believe it's like the payroll or something.
Yeah,
like
it's the quarterly payroll.
The quarterly payroll. So of course that's where he's basically like, that's how you're going to get your 200,000. But again, I don't think he has any intentions of giving him that money.
This guy's like cloak and dagger inside of a cloak and dagger inside of a cloak and dagger.
Right. So he agrees, and that's when we do return to Coruscant, specifically to the headquarters of the Imperial Security Bureau, otherwise known as the ISB. And the ISB are the ones making sure citizens are abiding by all the rules, aka doing whatever it takes to maintain Imperial control over everyone. So this is where we meet Supervisor Dedra, I believe is her name.
Dedra Miro.
Yeah, and she's very interested in the failure of corporate security on Ferrix.
Yeah.
And she's basically she's saying like, hey, there's a rebel uprising forming here.
Yeah.
This pattern is... There's a pattern going on here, and her boss, Major Partagaz, he doesn't agree, and thinks she's violating the perceived parameters of her scope of practice, as he says.
Say that 5 times fast.
And what I love the thing he says in the meeting that they have. I wish I had his quote.
I can't remember
about healthcare. Do you remember what he says?
I don't
gotta find it
remember.
real quick. Just say something about that scene. While
So
I look
like,
this up.
there's different types of oranges. So there's the clementine orange. There is the apparently I'm not big a nerd. I don't remember the other types, but I really like the clementines. So clearly, no, but for real though, it is interesting because I can't remember his name, but the corporate, security boss, he fails and he gets sent home as the Empire takes over. And so clearly this Dedra Miro, she's kind of like not taking his place because she's over, like, she's above him. But at the same time, it's like she's investigating him. She's investigating like his squadron of security guards and how that failed. Because she actually, if I remember from that scene, that she came from enforcement rather than the intelligence. She came from enforcement. So she's kind of more gung-ho about stuff like this. And she actually apparently was, so whenever Andor stole that sealed star plotter thingy that he stole the first couple episodes, it was under her. She's the one that it got stolen from. So anyway.
So here it is. He says, security is an illusion. You want security? Call the Navy. Launch a regiment of troopers. We are healthcare providers. We treat sickness. We identify symptoms. We locate germs, whether they arise from within or have come from the outside. The longer we wait to identify a disorder, the harder it is to treat the disease. It says, we're here talking about a serious infection, and all we're trying to do is determine how far it's spread so that we know how much we have to cut to save the patient.
That's a pretty baller quote, I have to admit. And that's exactly what some kind of CIA agent would think he's doing. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, that's actually a pretty cool quote. But yeah, I mean, that's clearly, again, just delving so deep into that clandestine, like, spy type things that, like, at the end of the day, we're trying to, like, suss out, these rebellious people that are trying to combat the Empire and did it.
That's a little sussy.
That's a little sussy baka. A little sussy. I think Andor's the imposter. Anyway.
So anyways, that dude is such a perfect example of the Empire.
Perfect example of the Empire. Yeah.
So then we get what is absolutely, without a doubt, the best part of the series in my book so far.
Oh, yeah.
And that is Mon Mothma.
Yeah.
Getting Mon Mothma, which she is here pretending to be an antique collector. And we've also seen Luthen, who goes and changes into this
persona,
persona, which is really cool.
High class.
It's really cool to see the change, and he plays it off so well.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is where we see this antique room, but yeah, he goes in or she goes in and wants to help her choose a suitable gift for her husband.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to him. But
yeah.
So they're pretending like they're like looking around talking about it. But then they do end up getting into like the back room to actually talk about why they're really there, which of course is to discuss the state of the rebellion.
Yeah.
And how the Empire has a hunch about what Mona's up to. She's too influential.
Yeah.
In the Senate. However, they can't do much to stop her. Still, she has to be careful with sending money here and there without a good reason. So she's saying,
Right.
"Hey, I'm starting to. There's eyes on me,
Right.
And like, how are we gonna do this?"
And it's kind of cool because a lot of her help, right? I'm getting a little close to the mic. A lot of her help, though, like her drivers and her wait staff and stuff, which is interesting, is like the Empire overlords, or whatever. Her higher ups are like forcing them to quit and replace them with other people who are not loyal to her. So, for instance, they go to that, they go to Luthen's or whatever he claims to be called, his antique shop. Well, instead of just being able to outright talk, well, now they have this new driver that was appointed to them by the, higher ups in the Empire, and so they have to be all, clandestine about it. But yeah, so it is interesting to see these kind of like small ways that she's being kind of like controlled and monitored and things of that nature.
Yeah. So let's talk about what's in the antique shop. So there's a lot of cool things that when you start to look, and I'd say the biggest one front and center that most viewers at this point will actually recognize is the Mandalorian Beskar.
Yep.
That is there.
That
So
armor piece.
that is something now that a lot of people see and go, oh, right.
Yeah, I know what that is.
So that would be probably the biggest one that people caught on to. I would assume, this was probably ripped off straight off of Fallen Mandalorian from the Siege of Mandalore,
right,
as we know,
right,
has already happened at this point. So,
so we also see some Sith Stalker armor. That's another thing that we see.
Yes.
So it is actually, so if anyone is familiar, that armor is popularized by one of the alternative endings on the Force Unleashed video game. So we have Starkiller. We have Starkiller, and at the end of the game, basically you have different options you can take, and if you choose to be the light side, you can become like this, beautiful light Jedi or whatever. But if you choose to go the dark route and kill Vader, I think it is. Long story short, like you get this Sith Stalker armor, which is like grafted to your skin, and it's just heinous looking. But this is very cool because it's not supposed to be his armor, but it's just a Sith Stalker armor in general. But it's a cool kind of nod to some things,
Yeah, and it does, and it does make you wonder if there is anything to that, or if it's just for fun. But I usually think a lot of times they do stuff like that for reasons. So
they definitely put stuff in for reasons.
So we also see a Utapauan monk weapon that they had there, and I think he talks about that.
He actually picks it up and shows it to her.
Yeah, which of course Utapau is where Obi-Wan was in Revenge of the Sith, and we also see actually one that I really enjoyed was the Indiana Jones whip is there.
Oh, so there's some carbonite frozen slabs, and it looks like
it's totally supposed to be.
It looks like it's supposed to be like a whip, which, again, there's a long history of Indiana Jones and Star Wars, like, referencing each other and putting Easter eggs in and stuff like that, because obviously they're both made by George Lucas, right?
Yeah.
So it definitely supposed to look like that.
And then there's also some tablets that we see, have some carvings and symbols on them, and those are very, very what it appears to be very close to being what we see in Star Wars Rebels, which is the world between worlds, right? The murals that we see there.
Yeah, so it has the father, the son, and the daughter, and it has those hands or whatever.
Yeah. So that is very interesting, and
Absolutely.
again, I think could be important because we know we're getting Ahsoka, the series, right?
Sure.
And if you look at a lot of the imagery they've showed us so far of the Ahsoka series, it has a lot of things that look like World Between Worlds, like the background and stuff. So the fact that that's there could mean something, right?
Right, definitely.
And then of course something else that we saw was the Jedi and Sith holocrons that are there, which
that's
is cool.
I feel like that kind of was more prominent in episode 5 than episode 4. But yeah, it was very cool because they did seem to be a little more.
You do get a much better view of them in
a more
episode
gratuitous
5.
shot. But they did seem to like almost more ornate too. If you looked at it closely, when compared to like kind of the more traditional ones that we see in like. We see him mostly in like the animation and stuff, so that could be playing a part in it too. But yeah, it's just interesting. I wonder if there's any history behind that. Why there's like so ornate and why they look so similar to one another with their Jedi and Sith. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and there's a mask that is like Plo Koon's mask.
Yes,
I don't know what his species is called, but
I don't know.
Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's Plo Koon's, but it would be kind of interesting if it was. Just saying. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, this is
the Keldor
mask
species.
This is the mask of, the Jedi Master Plo Koon. I think that'd be kind of neat.
Yeah, that would be. But obviously, as we know, though, he dies in a fiery plane crash. Yeah. So it'd be more difficult to
I don't know.
get that out.
Maybe he really spent time shining it up. But, yeah, put some spit on it.
Put some spit shine on it, boy.
So moving on from that, we follow Mon Mothma to her apartment.
Yeah.
And this is where we come to the displeasure of meeting her husband, Perrin.
Yeah.
And boy, Perrin's a loser.
He is a loser.
and you know what's interesting? I didn't know she had a husband.
No, I didn't either. No.
Was this? I'm curious if this was ever mentioned anywhere.
I feel like as a member of High Council or the Senate, I feel like it's kind of like, it kind of makes sense that she would kind of have to, like, on a societal level, you know what I'm saying? So it kind of makes sense. Like, I'm not surprised, but yeah, you're right. I don't think they ever, like, specifically mention her husband.
I don't think it's ever been talked about.
Yeah.
But this is what's, in my opinion, is cool. Here we are seeing Mon Mothma, the leader of the rebellion. Here we are seeing her now just like in her home, right? She's in her home with family issues. Like,
yeah.
This is cool. Like, this is the stuff that I'm really intrigued by in this show.
And you can clearly tell that this guy, A, he thinks he's a samurai. He's not. But B, he's clearly kind of like, he's like of no importance, but he's kind of riding off of this relationship as a husband of a senator.
And he's inviting a bunch of Imperial friends over.
Yeah, for dinner.
That are like her exact, like, basically her enemies.
In the Senate, they're like stymieing everything that she does in the Senate,
And so, she's kind of like freaking out about that, but he doesn't seem to care at all about anything really.
Right.
And then she says that he brought him a gift, and that's like all he cares about at that point is the gift.
I heard there's a rumor that you bought me a gift. And she's like walking away already. He's like, I returned it.
And so then Luthen, he dropped him off on the planet with Vel, who we talked about a little bit about. There may be some kind of relationship or protege or I don't know, something there.
Yeah.
But they talk and she doesn't trust him, and basically he convinces her to take him and join him, and so. This is where Cassian meets all of the team and meets the plan.
Yeah.
So the plan is to break into the Imperial vault to steal the payroll while a meteor shower of sorts provides them cover. And he's doing everything he needs to memorize by morning. They don't have much time. They only have one shot. One thing that this show does that's really cool, and we spend a lot of time here learning the team and stuff at this point,
right?
And also going into episode 5, we do a lot of the same. It's a lot of downtime with this team that they have, and I'm not even really going to go into everything about the team,
right?
Because most of them are probably going to die anyway.
No, they're all going to die at some point. I mean,
I guarantee you, in the next episode, some of them are not going to make it out of this alive.
Yeah, someone's dying.
At least
probably
that
dying.
Kid. Probably the kid. Yeah.
Probably because he's like the idealist,
right? The kid is the. So and what's interesting is all of these rebels, so to speak, they're rebelling. They're rebelling against the Empire for very personal reasons,
like just revenge,
revenge, or they didn't get a rank they wanted, in the Empire, or they hurt their loved one or whatever. So it's very personal stuff. Where the kid is different.
Yes.
The kid is doing it because he thinks it's the right thing.
Yes.
It's out of that, and so yeah, he's gotta die.
Yeah, my boy's gonna be dead.
He's totally gonna die. But I think that part of
his death is gonna maybe ignite the passion.
Is gonna ignite the passion,
right?
because he talks to Andor in episode 5 about his ideologies and stuff, and I think it in a sense is inspiring Andor, and by the end of it, when he does inevitably die, I think it's gonna help push Andor in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
But one thing that I think the show really does cool, and I noticed it, they do it in episode 4, but they really show us in episode 5, and that's when the TIE fighter comes roaring down. Okay, and it's just that one TIE fighter.
Yeah,
but it's so powerful.
Yeah,
and it's so like commanding, right, in that scene, and it's so menacing.
Fear,
and and you feel it, right? You feel it, and it's like, in other Star Wars things we've seen tons of those, right?
Yeah.
But what it shows is the perspective
exactly
of that civilian perspective.
Yeah, it was just the irony is that they're traditionally seen as so just like flimsy,
like cannon fodder.
They don't have external shields, right? They're just meant to be firepower sent out there. They're faster.
Yeah.
Maybe have higher rate of fire, but say that 5 times fast. But they're just supposed to, like I said, cannon fodder. They're just supposed to be sent out there for a war of attrition. But yeah, in this, just like you said, one, you feel that rumble, that fear. It's so loud and it's so imposing. Excuse me.
It's so cool because what they're doing is they're saying, no, this is what this looks like.
Yeah.
To your average Joe.
Yeah.
When they see a TIE fighter come through, like it's scary.
It's business.
And it's you're not looking at this from the perspective of a Jedi that's or even a seasoned rebel fighter who's been fighting these for years, and they just see them as cannon fodder. Like this is serious business. I thought that was incredibly cool. And I love that. And also Rogue One did some of those same kind of things, right?
Yeah,
I mean, for example, Rogue One gave us a whole different perspective on the Death Star, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I get a tickle in my throat.
He's got COVID.
So anyways, with episode 5, we spend most of our time with them just preparing for the operation. I will say right off the bat, I did not find episode 5 near as entertaining as episode 4.
Yeah.
I think episode 4 was really cool because we got we saw some of these more Star Wars things that we hadn't seen yet, and things. But this one is totally, I don't want to say it's filler, but it kind of is in a sense, because we know that Andor's kind of working in 3-episode arcs. Right, so these middle ones, and honestly, it's the same with episode 2.
Sure, yeah.
It kind of feels like it's okay. We're kind of just waiting to get to the moment, right? And so we do learn a lot more about the team he's working with and things. But it really, as far as like it goes with Andor, that's all it is. Yeah, because they're talking about their motives for why they're doing this.
Right.
Or the plan, like what they're doing. I will say one important part about it, and I think it is going to come into play when we watch the next episode, is when they say, when they ask him about the weight of the carrier or whatever.
Yeah.
They talk about like, I don't remember how they say it, but, and then he's like, wait, you guys don't even know? He's like, you guys don't even know how to do this? Like, he's like, what would you have done without me?
We would have figured it out. That's what we
would have figured it out. And then he goes, well, it's custom made. It's a custom made thing, and you got to do this, blah, blah, blah. So my question is that actually going to be there? Because
the thing, like the custom made thing, or
yeah.
Okay, yeah. I don't know,
because he's depending all of this on this custom made thing that they have.
Right.
So, well, I'm just curious if once they get into it,
the
thing he told them is going to be there, that's the thing you got to do,
right,
isn't going to be there.
Yeah,
and that's going to throw a big, and that's going to
Yeah.
mess up everything, because he kind of was like coming off as like, well, I know everything.
Because he said like, it's like, I'm going to pilot, I have to be the one to pilot. Then she's like, no, I make the rules. Like I said, I am the one piloting. If I'm putting my life at risk, I'm the one that's going to pilot this.
So I'm really curious to see if whatever he claims is going to be there is going to be there.
Yeah.
Some kind of lever or something. I don't remember what he said, but
true. Now, one thing we've neglected to mention that I just remembered, kind of a bigger part, I guess, in terms of just the character building, is that they actually do have a person on the inside. So it's an actual Imperial officer.
Right.
That is a part of them that's kind of feeding them all this information. So it's Lieutenant Gorn is his name.
Yes.
Lieutenant Gorn is again, like, he's just an Imperial officer, but he's the one that's kind of helping orchestrate all of this, feeding them this information and doing all this. So that, anyway, that's just kind of a small piece I want to just throw out there, but that's how they're getting this information. But so again, coming back to this though, episode 5, it's just, and I hate to be arbitrary, right? I'm not trying to be like, oh, I don't like, because I'm never like that with anything. But just with this show, it irks me. It bothers me that basically I felt like episode 5's contents could have happened in like a couple minutes. Like, all of this information could have been provided in just a few minutes. And and again, this is the arbitrary part, but part of me is like, with from now on, for any Disney show, we're talking Marvel, we're talking Star Wars, you guys only get 3 or 4 episodes per season, because any more than 3 or 4 episodes, you guys are just going to blow it up with filler. Like, I mean, consistently. That's how it always is. It's like all of the story can be fit within between 2 and 4 episodes.
Yeah, I will say, I totally get where you're coming from, but with this, I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah.
We're getting these 3-episode arcs. We're getting downtime where they're, and for example, we get the scene with, what's his name? Karn.
I can't remember.
He's the corpo officer.
The
one that gets booted.
Yeah.
So he goes in this episode, he goes home to his mom. Okay. And
she's Italian American.
I really like this scene. And so, she's just ripping into him. And immediately you realize, oh, this guy is who he is
because of her,
because of his horrible mom. Okay, like that's why he's the way he is at this point. And so he's sitting there, and she's just like beat him up. But it kind of goes that he's kind of a big kid, because he's sitting there and she's ripping into him, and she's got
she's literally pouring cereal, bro.
She's pouring cereal for him.
Cereal.
Right? She's pouring cereal, and I want this cereal. Like, somebody tell me what it's at. It's like blue Cocoa Puffs or something. And,
yeah,
and then
like
they
get
the blue,
black,
and they pour the blue milk in, which I loved. That was good.
Yeah.
But and he's just sitting there, just taking this beating from his mom, and then he's just like picking up one piece of the cereal. He's looking.
Like, I wish I would have known you when you was at your prime, so that I could at least have been sustained by the memory of your success. Like, thanks,
like this guy is. And this guy's so close to just being a serial killer at this point. But Andor is his, like, that's who he wants to kill, right? That's his, and we'll see how that plays into it. But clearly, like, he wants Andor to die.
Oh yeah, because he's just staring at his hologram.
Do you think there's anything to this Uncle Harlow?
So that was an interesting part. So she said, I'm going to have to call Uncle Harlow, see if he can get you in or whatever.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, no, don't call Uncle Harlow.
Yeah.
But clearly, well, she does call him.
She does, and he gets him, like, posted somewhere, some random hotel or whatever, right? As his headquarters. But yeah, because he mentions, he's like, well, do you think that he would even remember who you are if you called?
So naturally, I immediately think, oh, he's got to be part of the Empire. Sure, Uncle Harlow's got to be in the Empire. Karn's going to end up as officially a part of the Empire in some low position,
which we know he did, right?
But he will somehow end up back dealing with Andor, which is what he wants.
Right.
So I figure that's going to be the case. But yeah, if anyone finds out where you get that cereal, send me a link. I want that cereal.
Exactly.
I want to eat some blue milk puffs.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and kind of close her out. I think we're at almost 2 hours. So I mean, unless you have more to go.
I do have one more thing we got to talk about.
Okay.
I do have one more thing, and that is that the Mon Mothma home scene of this episode.
Oh, yes.
Where we then get another surprise.
Yes.
Mon Mothma also has a daughter, and she's just as crappy as her dad.
Yeah. But here's funny thing, and it's kind of an interesting, like, peek into reality, honestly, of how someone who, like Mon Mothma, has such good intentions that she's pouring her life into this burgeoning rebellion that she's neglecting her own family, and because of that, her daughter resents her for it.
So that's where it gets interesting, right? She says she wants to take her she wants to take her to school or something like
Something
that. Something like that, right?
Yeah, I think it was because she said
I don't
I have
know
no early
what they called
early
it,
classes.
but she wanted to take her somewhere.
Yeah,
And she was like, basically, her and the dad were both like, "Oh, so what are you really doing?
yeah.
Like, how is
like
this?
how is this benefiting
you?
you? Why is this a photo op? Or you just
Yeah,
trying to
like
make
what are you?
people look at you?
Who do you want to see you? Something of that nature." And she's kind of taken back and like, oh, I'm hurt. But
Yeah.
I had the thought, well, but what is it?
But yeah,
You know?
because at the end of the day, right, she's trying to make sure, I mean, could it be that she's trying to make sure that she's seen with her daughter because she's in this location, she's in this area out of her way because she's with her daughter?
So that does beg the question of like, was Mon Mothma?
Was it kind of true?
Was it true?
Yeah.
Was she?
Yeah.
Was there some motivation, or was she really wanting to take her daughter? I'm kind of honestly leaning more towards there was some kind of motivation there.
Like,
Again,
I think she did want to be with her daughter, but ultimately it was kind of like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
And I wonder, Mon Mothma right now, she has this family, and clearly the family does not connect with her. A lot of this probably because of her leading this essentially double life, but also, I mean, I think also the father or the husband is just kind of a loser, but which I think doesn't help. But I think also some of this is because of the way she lives her life and her belief in the cause of the rebellion. But I also think that something's going to go down with this family eventually. That's probably really going to be the final nail in the coffin.
Right.
So whether that means her family dies because of something with the rebellion, and like in retaliation, or they just finally leave her.
Yeah, just straight up leave.
They just straight up like, just, you're done. We're good. We're done with you. Either way, I think one of those have to happen.
Right.
She's not going to just clearly just have this family and be happy with this family.
Right.
And once we get to A New Hope and she is the leader, I don't think
there's
family,
they can't exist in one way or
I don't
another.
think there's any indication of that family. And she's officially, I mean, everyone knows at that point she is the rebellion. She is not
affiliated with anything,
with the Empire anymore, all that stuff. So, so I think that something has to happen there.
Right.
And the last thing I want to mention is we do get a brief scene with Luthen where he's sitting there like at the his comms, right? And he's just like waiting. And his assistant or whatever's like,
yeah,
what are you doing? You're not going to get a call till at least tomorrow night. Like, you're not going to get a call. And he's like, oh, and basically he says like, he goes like, I made a mistake. I brought this guy in last minute and I don't trust him. Yeah. And like, I don't know why I did it, basically. And I thought that was interesting because you can see him. He's been all cool and calm and collected until now. And you're seeing he's about to snap almost because he's like, I don't know if it's going to go.
And it's interesting because, again, as it sounds like, actually Andor is like an integral part of this. Like, they couldn't have done it without him, or wouldn't be able to do it without him. I think, again, I think it reinforces the thought that Luthen is so. What am I trying to say? Like, he's so adamant about this. Like, he's so concerned. That's what I'm trying to say. He's so concerned about this because I think that girl's his daughter. I think, because if it was just random people, I think he would be concerned because it is the starts of the rebellion and stuff like that. But they are pawns in his tool belt. But I think he is that concerned personally just because,
it definitely seems there's some kind of relationship there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's daughter. They technically have last names. That doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah, wow, yeah.
But based off what their names are right now that we know, they have different. But yeah, we'll see as things go. I think next episode could be a really good one based off, we know they're going to go with their big plan. Again, as we know, things aren't probably going to go as well as you would think. Probably some lives lost. But I would say in the end, Andor does make it happen. Yeah, I think that's going to be the big key. I think he's going to
pull it off. I think there's going to be some sort of inter-struggle with some of the people. He's going to want to back out, but I think maybe the kid dies and it reinforces,
whatever happens,
like that,
Andor is going to be the one that kind of holds it together, and that's how we're going to see. But
agreed.
Yeah, so stick around. We're going to continue to, of course, be talking about Andor. We hope you guys enjoy this episode. I know it's been incredibly long, but we had a lot of good discussion. Hopefully you find it good.
Yeah.
And, you can always skip around if you don't want to hear everything we have to say. I mean, that's up to you.
I know I do. So.
But we want to thank you guys so much for joining us. We love doing this. We love talking Star Wars with you guys, and we love your support. Don't forget about our Patreon, where you can be a Patreon producer for only $5, and that does get you, of course, early access to these episodes, but also an exclusive podcast and more. So you definitely want to do that if you get the opportunity. But you can also go and find us on Facebook and Instagram. We would love for you to share our stuff on there. Give us a good review. That always helps us as well. And you can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And I think there's a couple random places that have us. So, wherever. And if you listen to a podcast somewhere and you know that we aren't on it, let us know. We'd love to make sure our podcast is on that platform, because we would love to be as many places as we know our fans are. So, but until next time, may the Force be with you. And we thank you for joining the Jedi Eternal.
We would be honored if you would join us.
The Force will be with you always.